Hello and welcome to the United Film Podcast. My name is Greg Randolph. I'm a writer and director from Boston, Massachusetts. This podcast is an opportunity for me to tell you about filmmakers currently active in the UK from around the world. Today, Ruari Chambers is on the podcast. Ruari is a fellow London Film School alumni. Ruari actively pursued writing, acting, and cinematography at the program. We worked on several short films together, including his grad film Arcade, which is a film about two brothers learning to get along. We also worked together on short film Kintsugi, which he was director of photography for. This film brought us to Mexico, and it is another coming-of-age tale about two brothers learning to get along. Ruari is currently heavily active directing vertical dramas. This is a great snapshot of a filmmaker making moves in the industry here in London to gain more recognition and develop his own first feature film. Ruari Chambers, welcome to the United Filmmaker Podcast. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, Ruari. I really appreciate it. I've been meaning to have you on for a long time. You and your brother, you guys are both like super, you're active, you're passionate, you've created a great community here in London for movie making of all different types. And honestly, in a way, you're like someone I look up to. It's weird. Like it's how do I describe it? I think I'm just a fan of your passion and your kind of, I would describe it as maybe like a disciplined approach in a way. And I think you really just love it. We've been chatting kind of just in preparing for the podcast and, just talking about some of our friends who have had recent successes. And just, I think you described it as like you're proud of our group. And in some ways, I think family sometimes comes off a little bit like, maybe a little corny or something like that, but it does feel kind of like a big, maybe slightly dysfunctional family in some ways. Right. And I mean that in the best way possible. Like I think it's a bunch of people that are challenging each other in some ways to be the best they can be in the industry, right?
There's a healthy competition.
Yes,
which is nice.
Absolutely. With that being said, to get into the podcast, there's a lot to talk about. You've been really active working on your own films. You love to write. I feel like every time we talk about like a new thing we're writing. I love this. It was something you told me a couple weeks ago about you and your brother kind of challenge each other to finish a feature script in like a month or something like that. Mm-hmm. Or there was some cool challenge going on, and I love that idea. Like it's just such a nice way to kind of preempt yourself to write and go after it. And but also you've been doing directing vertical dramas, and but you're super passionate about wanting to get that feature written and begin to prepare for that as well. You made a really brilliant grad film called Arcade with some amazing actors in it. And that was just a fun project. I sparked on it for one day, which was super fun. And it was just like a good energy set. And I think you're like a born leader, and you've got a disciplined approach to what you do. So I want to hear about the beginnings. What was it that got you into film when you were younger? I want to hear a little bit about like maybe what life was like growing up in the outskirts of London, and what was it that made you think, I want to pursue this as a career?
Wow, what an intro. So, I grew up in a place called Barnes in southwest London, and filmmaking as a career didn't occur until I was in my teens. But when I was pre-teens, when I was growing up, it was more of an obsession. I was very obsessed with movies. We had a lot of DVDs at home, and that was the era where like you'd buy a load of DVDs and we'd always rewatch the same things over and over again. And Star Wars was definitely one of the big ones. Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi ones, we were obsessed with, me and my brother. Yep. We used to dress up as Spider-Man. We wanted to be Spider-Man. We wanted to draw Spider-Man. So it was definitely like an obsession with movies. And then I was also, I love to write from a young age. Creative writing was my favorite topic in school as a kid. And then I'd also act. So I did a lot of theater. When I was at school. Yeah, I was a little theatre kid. I'd
No
go to
way.
like weekend acting classes.
Cool, man.
I played Sherlock Holmes. I played
No
Creon
way.
in Antigone in a Greek tragedy.
Cool.
So I was a bit of a show off. I like to be on stage. And I think, and then I also, like I said, I was a drawer. I loved images, and I always tended more towards images than books. And I think combining the image-based storytelling with the wanting to tell stories, I think the natural conclusion just ended up being film.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the big films for me, which really cemented like my passion for it, was seeing The Dark Knight when it came out in 2008, and I think I was like 10 or 11.
Mm-hmm.
And it really just blew me away. I wanted to know everything about how it was made, like how they did it, how they created something that was like so amazing. So we got the Blu-ray, me and my brother, and we'd like watch all the special features like over and over again. Yeah. And
yeah, that's a special movie. Like that's like a movie to be obsessed. If you're going to be obsessed with one movie, I think that's a great movie because it's like it's got so many interesting stories behind it. I feel like, and yeah, it's just like there's just something like super special about it in that it's like a dynamic kind of movie, but it's also like a blockbuster kind of movie. I don't know. It's just got a certain like kind of feeling behind it.
Yeah,
You know?
it's got that magic, and I feel like a lot of filmmakers who were from other generations would cite like Star Wars as like the film that made them want to make movies. And I think for me, my Star Wars is The Dark Knight, and
cool.
I'm like, yeah, that's the gateway. Yeah,
man, I get it. That's really cool. Okay, yeah. So can I ask you, like, did you have any family members? I mean, I know it's you and your brother, I think, like, kind of like charge each other, like, with the movie making. But did your parents were they interested in movies?
I think they were. They definitely were like talking about movies, but I think at a certain point, me and my brother like overtook them, and all of a sudden they couldn't keep up with our discussions. But definitely starting out, me and my brother would ask loads of questions. I remember always asking my parents like, what's the scariest film you've seen? What's the most violent film you've seen? I used to have an obsession with like gory movies when I was really young. So I'd be like, what's the most violent film you've ever seen? And then my mum would say like Reservoir Dogs, and I'd be like, oh, I wonder what that is.
Yeah,
and I'd be like 7 or 8, and I'd be like, oh, can I watch it? And my mum would be like, no, you can't watch it. It's banned. So I would also imagine like what that movie could be, and I'd be kind of making this like violent movie in my head. And then I'd see Reservoir Dogs like years later, and I'd be like, oh, it wasn't that bad. I was expecting something like horrible.
That's really cool. Yeah, like you're super inquisitive. Yeah, kind of even like going beyond like with the parents, because you have a creative family. Like you were nice enough to invite me to a family party where your uncle was playing in a band.
Yeah,
and,
he's
like,
a songwriter.
Everyone was like, it was just such a nice time. There were some LFS people there, and it was just like a nice like little thing. It felt like, you know, even though I'm away from home, being from the States, that felt like a nice like warm hug, and there's like a family oriented thing, which I kind of miss.
There's definitely a bit of an artistic gene in my family, because my grandfather was also a musician.
Oh, really?
And my great grandfather was a painter.
Yeah, cool.
So there's definitely something.
Sure.
So yeah, I guess that's part of it as well.
Very cool, man. So can I ask you, because I know you're a bit of an athlete as well. Like you play football. Like I know you still do, but I think in undergrad you were as well during your BA program.
Yeah, I mean, I played for the college football team at my uni in Durham.
Nice.
I've always loved. I used to be good at cross country. That was my thing.
Yeah,
running. I did 800 meters on track and field.
Cool.
And I'm still a bit of a runner now.
Cool.
But nowhere near in the shape I used to be in. Honestly.
Fair enough. So I want to ask you. So it sounds like the love was there from the get-go. It wasn't really a question or anything like that. And at what point was it like wanting to make them? Because it sounds like you always had that creative gene. Was it during your BA? Like were there film programs there that were able to spark that imagination into making? Tell me a little bit about that process, because then I think that will lead us up to LFS potentially. Yeah. And you can tell me about if there was any in between time, like what was happening there.
Yeah. One more thing on my sort of filmmaking upbringing before we get on to that is my granny used to babysit us a lot when we were growing up, and she would always bring around like classic movies for me and my brother to watch, black and white films. But when we were 7 or 8, we'd usually be like, oh, I don't want to watch it. I don't want to watch it. But then occasionally there'd be one which would be like so good, we'd pay attention. So for example, Psycho, she'd bring around a Hitchcock film, and we'd be like, oh, this is boring. And then like 5 minutes in, 10 minutes in, we're like hooked, and we're like, this is amazing. Yeah. So she also introduced us to like Billy Wilder, Woody Allen, Orson Welles, Chaplin, Hitchcock. And so we kind of got a bit of like a film history thing from my granny. She's no longer with us, but I always kind of think of like her as someone who like showed us some of like the old Hollywood classics. And
so cool.
Yeah.
So cool. Yeah. I remember going to New York when I was a kid and watching, some of those black and whites. It's a little bit hard to access when you're younger age, or you're like, it's just, it's such a world away. I think that's part of the cool thing with film is that like, right, you watch it and it feels like a completely different planet, you know, the talking and the style. And then I think there was a switch that gets flipped and you're like, you get that the film is just capturing a lot of like what conversation was like at that moment, you know what I mean? And the trends that were just in the world, as opposed to like, oh, we're making a film that is meant to push you away or something like that. Yeah. So I get that. And that's really cool. So there's a bit of a similarity there. So yeah, tell me about maybe a little bit about your BA program. If there was a lot of if there was any type of practical application there.
Yeah.
Or?
So there was a film society, but before I went to uni, me and my brother would actually make Lego stop motion films. So we'd experiment a lot with like the home video camera. There was a function where you could take a still image. So we figured out we could do stop motion with a video camera using that like setting. So we'd like get our Lego figures, we'd light it, we'd shoot a whole thing, and we'd edit it in camera because then when you played it back, it just created the stop motion because we didn't have iMovie. But then later on we got a bit more advanced and we started making films with like stills photography and then putting that into iMovie. Cool. And there's still a few of our shorts like on YouTube that exist out there. And then we'd also kind of we did a bit of live action as well with the home video camera. Whenever we went on holiday, we do a little short film, usually like a fight scene, because me and my brother, we love to fight, and then we just like kind of shoot a little fight scene. Again, we'd like edit it in camera, and then we'd like plug it into the TV, press play, and all the shots would just play out in sequence.
Yeah, it's too fun. I think there's definitely something, again, like remembering just like hanging out with my friends in the cul-de-sac or something like that and doing something stupid with like action figures or toys, or and it's something I always just got such a kick out of it and just would laugh. Like I remember just never being so like just like tickled by like the recorded aspect of things. Like it was just so silly and like, but also like kind of out of body in a weird way. Yeah, it's just a strange kind of joy for it. Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, cool. So then you were like kind of messing around.
Yeah, definitely. Like definitely messing around with little short films, little stop motion films. Being obsessed with the making of films. Like we'd watch the kind of behind the scenes stuff all the time. And then went to uni. There was a film society there. Nice. I got to make a few very amateurish short films, which they were what they were, but I still learned a lot from them. Totally. And there's one guy who I'm still like very close with from that university. So that was always good. But like my group wasn't as like film focused. Yeah. So I was kind of like, I felt like I was a bit on my own. Yeah. Which is why like when it came to LFS, all of a sudden I'm immersed in a whole world of people that like do exactly what I want to do, which is very special. What
did you study during your BA?
Well, I originally was doing biology. Nice. But I knew that at this point I already knew I wanted to be a filmmaker. I already knew, but for some reason I had studied sciences at A level, and because I was good at it, and like I just thought I'll do that. But then I arrived at uni, I'm like, this is not gonna. I'm in a lab like with pipettes, and I'm like doing an experiment. I'm like, this is not gonna do anything for me. Yeah. So I put in a request to change to philosophy because I'd read that like Ethan Cohen and Terrence Malick had read philosophy, and I was like, okay, well if I can pivot to that, at least that's kind of going in a better direction than biology right now. So I switched to philosophy and then studied. That was my course, my BA course. Cool. For 3 years.
Very cool. So let's talk a little bit about after school, after your BA program, and going to LFS. When did LFS start to enter the picture? Was that something that you were thinking early on? I mean, there's a couple of big programs. There's NFTS. I had Rodolfo on this morning. He's kind of doing the double thing now with NFTS and LFS. But what kind of went into that decision? Like, because remind me, it was you first went to LFS, and then your brother went, I think, a term or two later. Yeah. Is that correct?
So I think, so 2020, my plan was to become an editor. I wanted to work in Soho. Cool. And I literally did the door-to-door thing, handing out CV, nothing, like no responses. And it was actually my mum who was like, you should just apply to film school. Like, you don't have to, but it's a good backup to have. And I was kind of like, at the time I was like, I didn't really want to do it. I don't know why. I think I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder of like, well, my favorite directors didn't go to film school. So same. Like I kind of had this thing like, oh, maybe I shouldn't. But that was just nonsense. And so we applied to LFS. I applied first. Tom wanted to go to Japan to teach English. But then a month later, COVID hit and we're all like stuck in the house. Yeah. There's no way I can get a job. But then I get an interview at LFS. So I'm like, maybe this is like the lifeline to like give me something to do through the pandemic. so yeah, that's what happened. August 2020, that's when I started, and
Cool.
we were all wearing the masks, and it was like, even though it was still very like socially distanced and everything, it was like exactly what I needed at that point, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's just that community. That's what everyone that I've had that's been a part of LFS is just, you just can't get away from the fact that it's that community that's like really helping move things along. Okay, so tell me at LFS. So basically, you've always had this kind of passion for it. You and your brother have always kind of worked towards it. Kind of motivated each other in a way. Your parents kind of facilitated. Granny kind of was hooking up those films. You're making films at LFS. Tell me about that experience that leads up. I would like to say to your grad film, to Arcade, and then we can talk a little bit about Arcade, because I think what I like to be looking at with this type of podcast is like, it's interesting to see like an emerging filmmaker, you know, someone who's on the way, looking at figuring out style, figuring out the types of films that they like versus what they're making, you know, and is it more action oriented? Is it more psychologically oriented? So LFS is the perfect kind of like, I guess what I would describe it as kind of like actually finding style, you know, really applying things with a group of people, as opposed to like, I just feel like before, and I agree with you about that sentiment of, oh, I don't need film school or this or that. Like, it's just more difficult. It's hard to find filmmakers, you know. It's not like, oh, they're all in the streets, just easy to pick them out, you know.
Yeah, well, when I was at university, everyone that I was hanging out with wanted to go make money in the city. Yeah. So I was kind of like the artsy kid on the sort of sidelines, like, oh, I like movies. I was kind of like the film guy, and like they were like, we're gonna go make loads of money.
Yeah, I know.
So there was a bit of that going on. But yeah, no, when I arrived at LFS, I was very green. Like, I'd done lots of amateur student films and like side projects, but I'd never really been on a set before. I didn't know how that worked, and how, you know, the sort of machinery of a movie set. Like, I didn't know what a first AD was. I didn't know what a first AC was. So I think first and foremost, like, the main thing for LFS for me was like the actual mechanics of filmmaking. Like, how does that work? How does the sort of military aspect of it work? Because it's a combination of military and circus. Yeah. They need to kind of go together to like make this like crazy artistic endeavor. But like the actual discipline for me was like super eye-opening. And like, I think one of the best things I got out of LFS was just being like comfortable on a set, because the first few times you get on a set and there's dozens of people running around, and like you've all got to kind of, you know, like a hive of bees, you've got to work together and like all do your jobs. It can be a little bit like overwhelming. So it took me a while to get like used to that. And then in terms of like finding style, I mean, I wish I could have learned a bit more about that at LFS, because of the nature of the way like the pitching and stuff works. Inevitably, you don't get to do as much as you want. And the other thing about that is like you kind of learn about all the different opinions people have on different kinds of films. So a style that you think might be really good, someone else might be like, that's not my style. And I think you really have to learn to like trust your own instinct, because just because someone else might not enjoy that style doesn't mean you shouldn't still pursue it.
Totally.
So I think I kind of learned through LFS just to be like, no, I should just keep doing what I'm doing and ignore like people that, you know, criticize a style or don't think a certain style is going to work. Because I think that's a big thing about film school. There's so many very strong opinions, which is great because it really challenges you and gets you to think about what you're doing.
Totally.
But you just got to learn to like sort of filter out what's good and what's useful in a way.
Absolutely. Can I ask you, was there a project before we get to the grad film that you specifically enjoyed working on, that you felt you learned a good deal from? You DOP'd a project Term 5 that was kind of fun. It was a fun watch. You know, it was like an exciting film. Victor was director of it.
Yeah.
Maybe you could talk about that if that.
Yeah. No, so I was the DP on The Wait, and I mean, so at LFS, I think that one of the things I really got into was like camera and lighting. I did a lot of sparking. And that was great because I got on so many sets. And as you know, like it's a great way just to get on sets and see how other people do it.
And you sparked on some brilliant grad films, Shooting Watermelons. You were in For the Bull, which has been incredibly successful recently.
So you get to see all these films on that.
You were really in there. I think you were really smart in finding your way onto some of like, you know, seeing who's out there, who's really excelling, and being a part of that, I think, is really smart.
Well, I think it was just lucky that those people were also like good friends of mine as well. Like, I was still like good friends with them now.
Yeah.
And So yeah, the wait was fun because it was a very like high concept sci-fi kind of drama. So I got to experiment with like, you know, quite bold lighting choices. I got to, you know, shoot at widescreen, use like diffusion filters, and like just really kind of.
And you shot in Stanford's as well. You shot in the library or the bookstore close by to LFS.
Exactly. We did a night shoot there. No, that was really cool. We had a little dolly. We had it was good. And I was super happy with the way it turned out. And,
yeah, it's cool.
I think cinematography is definitely like the thing after directing that I'm like. I like to learn about because it's such a big part of like the craft of filmmaking.
I think, you know, what's really cool is I haven't really touched on it yet, but yeah, you DP'd Rodolfo's grad film in Mexico and the UK. Again, we just chatted about it this morning, but yeah, you obviously have a deep love for cinematography as well. That was shot on black and white and color film, again, between Mexico and the UK and Dartmoor National Park. So, and you've DP'd several projects, you know, so it's you have a cool angle on things, definitely, and you've got the edit. You were interested in editing before even going to film school, so you've really got a lot of like skills that kind of play together, you know. So it's cool to watch that trajectory kind of like play itself out, like as you leave school. Cool. So I guess that leads us to the grad film. Tell me a little bit about Arcade. You know, it's about two brothers. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the story, just to kind of kick things off. And I think with that film, once we kind of the audience has an idea of the story, less than like a play-by-play. Tell me something you learned from it. You know what I mean? Like I know that's tricky to kind of all sum into one thing, but you have some perspective on it now, and I feel like it's had some plays at festivals, which has been really cool. So it's one of those things, and I feel the same way, where it's kind of like you have to lay it to rest a little bit, even though it's that special grad film, and start to move on into like all this other awesome work that's happening. You know, again, like getting the features out there, doing these vertical dramas. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, so Arcade was my grad film. It's a story about two estranged brothers who've not seen each other in a long time, and then the older brother shows up out of the blue to take his younger brother out for his 18th birthday. The older brother is a kind of hedonistic drifter type, a bit of a reckless kind of guy.
Yeah.
And then the younger brother is a more kind of reclusive kind of hermit. He stays in his room, he plays video games, he goes to the arcade, but he's kind of an insular kind of guy, sticks to himself. Yeah. And it's kind of about what happens when those two kind of opposite personalities clash, but they're also brothers. So then they're never going to be truly apart because they have that kind of family connection. So I just wanted to do a film which kind of explored the friction between the older brother and the younger brother, and the power dynamics, and how maybe after this kind of wild birthday night out between the two of them, after that inevitably goes wrong, can they still find some kind of common ground? And I learned so many things doing that film. I learned so many things. I think one of the most important lessons I learned was about like thinking very deeply about the point of view of the film. I think the film kind of covered broadly both points of views, but I kind of learned watching it, maybe, you know, if I just picked one point of view, maybe the younger brother's point of view, and like explored more of that, maybe that could have been more interesting. And I think there were just lots of lessons I learned about what scenes deserve more time during the shoot, because I remember like with the way we scheduled some of the days, I spent a lot of time doing like a Steadicam shot where you know, there wasn't that much drama going on, but then the next scene where there was drama going on, we rushed it. There's little lessons like that were like very, you know, I still kind of think about those things. And I just think it's one of those things where, of course, if you did it again, you'd do it so differently. In ways I can't even describe, but it's just like, you know, every shot would probably feel different. The scenes would probably feel different. But I think more or less it would be the same story. Yeah, I mean, the other thing I did was I did this kind of very sort of bold swing at the end where they go into like the video game world together. And I just wish that but
very ambitious, very, you know, it's like you didn't leave anything on the, you know, you left it, you know, there was no, you went for it, which I think is really important.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely the thinking, was just like, you got to do something kind of crazy, right? You got to, because like the short film world is unbelievably like competitive, and if you're not doing something kind of a bit like bold and stuff, like what's the point? So I wanted to do something bold, but like saying that now, I wish I kind of pushed it a bit further, maybe using like animation or a different technique. But it's definitely something. I'm still proud of the film. I still I'm proud of the result.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the arcade Steadicam stuff is really cool because you kind of have that cool, like, not like Drive kind of look, but like the neon. You get the neon look with that kind of digital, and the arcade. I don't know. There's something about shooting in an arcade that just always looks kind of badass. I don't know. It's like it's kind of maybe more of an aesthetic thing, but I feel like that's kind of where you were deriving some of like the style from. Is a little bit of this like kind of neon meets kind of this, not noir, but kind of this a little bit of that, like whatever that aesthetic is a little bit.
I mean, that's kind of the sort of philosophy of like the approach to the filming as well, as we wanted to infuse every scene with that kind of heightened, saturated color of a video game. So that's why every scene is kind of has that vibrance to it, like the arcade, and all the colors are popping and quite like intense in a way.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what, just to touch on this idea of like perspective, POV, and the having two kind of leads, I guess you'd call it, where they both have a similar amount of screen time. I totally understand that. Different Faces had a similar kind of thing going on, where my grad film, where it's it's a couple kind of like and you kind of want to get, and maybe you think, oh, maybe their perspectives are similar in some ways, and so I kind of want to be able to tell a little bit of each of the stories. And I understand that, like, especially when you have like co-leads, it's like you still need to have that important singular perspective.
You can still cover both points of view in certain scenes, but I think in a given scene, like, the audience wants to be feeling the emotions of a certain character,
for sure,
or they want to understand them deeply. But sometimes if you're just doing both in a broad way, they're kind of not involved with either, and like it can sometimes feel that way.
And it's like a little middling, you know what I mean? It's just a little bit like and that's like, I guess that's a kind of like a poison for a movie a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, the audience wants to be feeling connected, and like they want to be constantly given like a stream of emotion, which is like connected to a character. So I think I learned a lot about like what the audience wants. They just want to be with someone's emotions. If you can do that, you can make a film about anything.
Absolutely.
Really.
So Rory, I want to talk about kind of post LFS life a little bit. Tell me about because it's not a clear-cut path, you know what I mean? Exactly like you were saying in undergrad, where it's like, you have friends that they're not so concerned, and then you kind of have someone has a bit of a more of artistic view, and is like that path it's possible, but it's not clear. So tell me about what your mindset was kind of leaving LFS and what you wanted to do, because you've really taken to directing. You are super passionate about getting a feature accomplished, and your writing seems like a lot, but you've really taken to these vertical dramas, and I really want to talk about it because it's been such a phenomenon in the past couple of years, at least that I'm aware of. I know vertical dramas kind of broadly have been around in China and in other parts of the world, but it's just blossoming in a lot of different ways. And I want to hear kind of your perspective on just starting with getting out of school.
So yeah, left LFS, didn't really have a clue what I was going to do, to be honest. Obviously directing was always like what I had in mind, but it's like any grad, they're just kind of, you got to find work, you got to do something. So I started off doing like corporate videos, editing, shooting corporate interviews, because I remember hearing about Christopher Nolan and how he did that, and he was like, well, he still learned a lot of things doing that. And even though you are shooting things which aren't narrative, you're still using the camera, you're still using lighting, you're still kind of using the fundamental techniques of shooting. So I was like, I'll do that, but to be honest, it wasn't for me. I really didn't enjoy it. And at that point I was like, what the hell's gonna happen? I don't know. And then luckily I got a call from Victor and Leo, who were doing these things they weren't called vertical drama at the time. I don't even know what they were called. They were called something else. But I was asked to be a prop car driver on that set.
Nice.
Driving a Range Rover, because they're all billionaires in those shows, as you know. So I'm driving this prop car, and I get on the set day one, and I'm just sort of hanging around, chatting to the producer, and tell her I graduated, I'm a director, blah, blah, blah. And then she asked me, do you want to be a DIT? And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. So I come back the next day, I'm a DIT, and I'm driving the car. So I'm, now I'm hanging out, but I'm also doing the rushes.
Nice.
And then she asked me, do you want to edit it as well? So I come back the next day, I'm DIT, I'm driving the car, and I'm also editing it, learning about this crazy medium of vertical drama. And then chatting to the producer again, and she says, do you want to direct the next one? And I was like, yeah, totally. And then I think that first one I did went quite well, and then they offered me an in-house contract.
Yeah, man.
And then did that with them for a year, basically.
I think maybe it kind of I think we kind of explained things just a little bit. So Victor and Leo are also alumni of LFS who have been involved in Picklock Films, which is a production company very much kind of on the uptrend, doing super well. They're doing a lot of different work in London and abroad. They're kind of all over the place. And a big part of their production company has been directing vertical dramas and producing vertical dramas, which has been really interesting to watch, and they kind of got a hold of it. I'm sorry, it's Victor, Andy, and Leo. And they've kind of got a hold of things. And it seems like from there, I had the pleasure of doing 2 early on, and we kind of had like a connection there for at least a little while, which was, it's I guess, again, to describe vertical dramas, just because it's kind of a new subject for the podcast, it's because a lot of people ask, right? Maybe you can talk a little bit about just. I know you've done it a million times.
Yeah, I've been refining my description over the last year, 2 years, and I think the way I'm talking about them now is I'm saying it's like a TV show for your phone, but the episodes are 2 to 3 minutes long.
Got it.
And it can only be seen on a phone because it's shot vertically. So the camera gets rotated 90 degrees. You view it in portrait mode on a phone, and it's bite-sized chunks, and it's essentially a feature-length film broken down into episodes, and you can swipe up, watch another episode. So it's like it's got the reward system of like doom scrolling, of like swiping up on your phone, but except you're watching narrative content essentially. Yep,
exactly. That's the best definition I've heard. So I think my question is, tell me more about your experience since that first one. I want to hear about like the types of tell me a little bit about the subject matter and how that's evolved over the time, and tell me a little bit about maybe some difficulties you've had and some successes, because I want to hear, because I think what's interesting about it is obviously these vertical dramas are interesting in some ways, and you're obviously networked to the max, meeting all these actors, meeting all this crew, and I think it will flow into work that you want to write and direct one day, maybe, who knows who you end up working with. But it also is fueling what I've noticed in just doing the 2 that I've done, is it fuels that kind of intuitional improvisation when you're kind of on the day posed with problems, where you're not able to rehearse extensively. Tell me about all that. I know that's kind of a jumble, but I think you get where I'm going with that.
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of like the content, they're very sort of estranged from what I would necessarily want to write about, or what I would intuitively want to talk about in a film.
Yeah, Rodolfo he was talking about telenovela.
Yeah, they're telenovela, like very melodramatic. They're like soap operas on steroids, but they're usually, love stories. They're tending towards a woman being saved by a billionaire, a mafia man, or a werewolf, some kind of like escapist romantic fantasy.
Right.
And it's for female audiences, so it was a bit of a step out of my comfort zone in terms of like the stories.
Yep.
But you're still telling a story. You still have to like find your way into the character, and what's the drama, what's the conflict. All those questions are still applicable to any story. So yeah, that's a part of it. And then, like you say, you're dealing with a lot of issues that you wouldn't normally face on a personal project, because often you get like 2 or 3 weeks prep, but it's a 120-page script.
Right.
It's almost impossible to prepare that whole thing. Right. So a lot of the time on set, you're relying on your sort of base instinct as a filmmaker, and like, how can I make this scene work? I've not had time to storyboard this whole thing.
Right.
I've just met these actors today, and they've got to scream at each other and then kiss, and I've got like an hour to do it.
Yep.
And you're really just relying on like your gut instinct. So I think it's been pretty valuable to just experiment with that and like figure out how to solve those problems in a very short space of time, because we've not mentioned the shoots are like 8 days long,
right?
7 or 8 days, and you're shooting like a 100-page script. So it's a huge volume of material you've got to get through. And yeah, sometimes you're just meeting the actors on the day and they've not learned their lines, and so there's every kind of issue you can imagine with like a film or like shooting something, like they probably happen in vertical drama because of the nature of how quickly they want to make them. But I'm convinced it's like amazing experience. Like no matter what the end product is, it's still just by being on the set and being put in those situations where you have to like get that result at the end of the day, it's still like valuable.
Absolutely.
And I think Tom is doing them as well, my brother.
Yeah.
And we talk a lot about like
the valuable
valuable sort of experience of doing them. And I think anyone who can direct one, I recommend just to try it, because it's definitely like you'll learn something about yourself, and you'll learn about like your instincts and
Absolutely.
where they lie.
Absolutely. Coming out of school and being able to do this type of stuff, I think directing any type of content, especially when you're able to make some money doing it, is super valuable, because those experiences are few and far between. And when you come across them, I think you have to take them for all they're worth, because you never know where that will take you. You know, in my case, doing a couple of them led me to a producer who's doing some of these low budget features, and that it's like you will. It's just a natural, if you have that goal of wanting to get into, I think, which is primarily anyone coming from LFS wants to get into features, and because the short film game is a small game, you know what I mean, and there isn't much money in it, and when you start, and you want to start to get either into television or into film, and if you want to direct, you have to find those pathways, and this is, I just think it's a great start. So it's an interesting beast, but it's something I never really thought was going to like mature in this way, but it's something for the now,
Well, and I hope it does continue to mature, because like I said before, like the content is like a lot of sort of pulpy romantic dramas, and my hope is that eventually we're going to have more say in the script, and we're going to kind of get to make our own versions of these stories, if I continue to do them into the future, because I think at least the people making them, the actors included, they get growing tiresome of these like romantic roles, and they want to do something a bit more interesting. But then the one I just did was a bit different. Tell
me about it.
It's a family drama about a woman who gets wrongfully imprisoned of trying to kill her best friend, and then she goes to prison for 5 years. She comes out of prison and finds that the best friend is trying to steal her family. The husband loves her, the kids love her, and the best friend has turned her whole family against the mum. And then it's about how the mum tries to like, turn the tables and like get revenge on the best friend. And it was so refreshing for the actors to do, because there was like no intimacy. It was just pure drama, pure like high stakes conflict. And it was more fun than like the other ones I've done in a while.
Very cool, man. Yeah, it's super fun. And you know what? It goes without, it doesn't go without saying, but these vertical dramas get insane views on their platforms. Like what have you noticed? What have you seen from the ones you've directed? Have you seen lots of...
Yeah, so some of the platforms are pretty like, they keep the figures quite close to their chest, but it's normal for a show to get 10 million views. Like the one I did on Drama Box is like on an 11 million, which isn't even that much for a vertical, because they can go up to like 100 mil.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So like I think like 10 mil is like
it's
like the standard number.
It's amazing, man. It's amazing. Yeah, and it's just, I guess it goes back to kind of that like that interest. We have an interest in drama. We have an interest in kind of like in like different characters, kind of having some kind of like high drama kind of, I don't know. What do you think? What do you think kind of feels? It's like, I even think it's not like Jerry Springer or something like that, but I'm just trying to think about, like something from my childhood where it was like fun to watch, but it's like maybe not like, it's like we all have that kind of want to watch like something that's like a little bit more fun and not so.
Yeah. Like even people that are like, they're detractors of vertical drama, they can't deny that they're addictive to watch.
Yeah.
Like they'll watch a few and they'll be like, okay, I'm hooked.
Yeah.
So there's something about like the style and the essence of it, which is inherently kind of addictive.
At the end of the day, like even if you're not taking it like you're taking like it's super serious, it's kind of like a comedy in a way. It can be like kind of a fun watch. It's like silly and it's just an interesting concept, and it makes you think a little bit about like our phones and like, this whole idea of like, and also like the framing of it, because I was talking with Jumbo, who you've worked with on quite a few of them. And we were I was just talking with him about even just like framing for vertical drama and lighting for vertical drama, and also like he was telling me, you guys, when you guys would plan kind of shots, and this idea of like not really having actors walk so much. They will come, land on a spot and kind of deliver lines.
You've got to be very precise with the mark, because the frame is so narrow that a bit of movement either way and they're just out of the shot.
And I think it's really smart that he was telling me also that you guys kind of just looked at some of the really successful ones, or the ones that the client was bringing to you and saying, we want to do something similar, and then breaking that down with the DOP.
The process definitely got a bit more like refined as it's gone on, but I want to hear a little bit about your first two, because I know when you started it, I think you did some before me, and I think that time was very much like the Wild West of verticals in the UK, because I think
it's like month by month.
I think at that point they had just arrived. No one knew what they were, and people would just show up on the set, and it's like, what the hell are we making? And I think it was maybe you could speak to that experience.
I mean, I think you were there for quite a few. I think you were in that phase of like, I remember we set up a third camera for one of them, and I was like, what the hell are we doing? We've got two cameras. How are we going to do a third camera for this like two shot of this? And I was a little bit like perplexed by it. But I think
because it was like, I remember we were in this like huge house, and I was just there for one day because I don't know, I can't remember why I was there.
In Teddington maybe,
but
or something like that.
And there was like 10 or 15 people in this tiny bedroom with like 3 cameras.
Right.
And
Kun
it was like,
was DOP.
The actors barely had any space to like move. And it was a bit like, everyone was just like, what is this?
Yeah.
What are we making? But I think now people are a bit more accustomed to what the style is, and I think they spend a bit more money on the locations now, and they get it, you know.
No, it was really interesting for me. It was like I think Andy connected me with the production company, and I was definitely interested because I wanted to direct something. I was just it sounded like something new. I think I heard about it. It's tough because it was quite a while ago now. It was probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago now. But I'm grateful for it. You know, I'm grateful for all these experiences, as tough as they can be, and the hours and things like that. It was definitely like a fish out of water kind of feeling, but I really enjoyed it. It's like I have memories of specific scenes that I thought were interesting. Unfortunately, I never really saw where either of those vertical dramas went, but it's just the nature of it. I try not to beat myself up too much about it or anything like that. Some of them you end up seeing, some of them go by the wayside, but I'm grateful for the experience, and I would be interested in doing more, but it's just always about, you know, the time fitting, the schedule, and like you said, like what you just described as far as story, that would make me really excited to do one, you know. And I am interested, like in just regards to like you doing a 2-camera setup, which I haven't done much of, and which I think is valuable, like for more professional. There's lots of films that use multiple cameras for. Are
you doing 2 cameras on your features now?
No.
Okay, wow.
One camera. So, and then just to explain, because I think it's good to like a conversation, like where we're learning kind of about like what we're both working on. So, since then, I've linked up through the vertical dramas. Was actually one of the actors who was a producer as well, Louisa Warren. Shout out to Louisa. She's been so great in kind of like opening some doors for me, and just like kind of working on these Champ Dog features, which have been interesting. It's been a wild ride. It's been a while, but what's interesting about, so since the vertical dramas, I've started to do these features, which happen in a similar amount of time, and they're similar in some ways in regards to the style, 5 days, 7 days, but it's just shot horizontally, one camera, but a pace that is just as quick. I don't know why they haven't thought of 2 cameras, you know, to really try and be quicker about this stuff. I don't know if it's budget oriented, but it's not really like, I mean, I guess it's if you get 2 FX3s or FX6s, is that a much bigger expense? And I guess the whole question is, those 2 cameras are going to split your time for a lot of the stuff. That was something I was speaking about with Jumbo a little bit as well, is this idea of like, we kind of went through like a scenario where basically like we said, okay, imagine it's like 2 actors at a table, you know, and we're having some type of serious conversation about like some type of problem, you know, or something like that. So I think it would make sense to get the 2, like not the 2-shot, but get singles, right? But then say you were able to do a second setup with 2 cameras, you know, what would you do? Probably a cutaway, you know, you maybe act out the whole scene again, do a cutaway, and then maybe do a close-up as well. And I was just thinking like it gets like a little fumbly in kind of like, you know, doing, when you start to do multiple takes with say 2 people. I know he was telling me a lot of the time, you know, there might be like 7 different people in a room and they all have speaking parts, in that case it makes more sense. You can jump around with the camera and do all
usually have these like what are referred to as banquet scenes in vertical drama, where you'll have like a huge room with, you know, so many people in black tie, and they've all got lines, and like someone gets a wine bottle chucked at them, and those scenes are always super complicated because there's moments where, for example, if someone gets wine thrown over their wedding dress, you get one take of that. but then that's midway through the scene. So you've got to like plan it in such a way that you get everything you need before that moment, and then you shoot the rest of it. So it's logistically it's a puzzle, but like I say, just solving that puzzle is still like a great thing.
It's amazing. Yeah, and you just get better and better at that, and you will absolutely bring that to these films that you're writing, and you're really and it'll fuel. Maybe it'll even, that's the cool thing, is it might fuel the writing in such a way that like that's also the thing I kind of think about it, is even just the style of the writing and stuff like that, and how that will kind of infiltrate. Maybe you don't want everything, but it'll be interesting to see maybe how acting changes a little bit when people are kind of doing these kind of melodramatic kind of things, and then would that show up more in like these big films you see?
But so for example, with the Champ Dog films you're doing, is the acting style, is that still quite like melodramatic and heightened, or can you make it a bit more like naturalistic and real?
So what I would say is, so the rom-com I did, Tailor-Made Romance, that is totally like a vertical drama. Billionaire guy, doesn't know how to dress, is connected by his sister with a kind of an up and coming like tailor. She's really excited to do this stuff, and then they kind of start to have a connection, and that's like sounds so vertical drama to me. And then the second one, I Know What You Did Last Christmas, that's when Champ Dog has this kind of knack for horror films, and that's different. I mean, I imagine there are some horror vertical dramas out, but
I think there are, but for some reason they've not been as successful.
Yeah, and I think the trick is that that's what's interesting about Champ Dog, is they kind of hang their hat on horror films and kind of fueling that audience. And it seems to be popular in some. They're connected with a distribution company called ITN, so it's interesting to see kind of that interplay. As a for-hire director, I don't know all the ins and outs of where this stuff goes. They get trailers made, which unfortunately I don't have much say in, but end up always looking good.
Yeah. Do they put them into cinemas, these features?
It depends. So it's the idea is that it's Champ Dog has a kind of a brother company called Jagged Edge, which is Scott Chambers' production company, which is responsible for Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, and these other kind of again horror kind of take on fairy tale type of films, and those will make the cinema. So it's a variety. Some of them end up going to festivals. Some of them go straight to streaming.
Is it kind of based on the result? They like kind of look at it after it's made, and then decide?
I think a lot. I think I don't know. I think they're contracted for a certain amount of films, and a certain amount of them are meant to go to a streaming platform, and then maybe some others that are developed a different way are set up to go to film festivals. It just depends on the system that has been planned for that group of films, which generally when I'm hired, I don't get that information. I probably would be interested in asking some of those questions early on. I've been told, Greg, you want to send one of these films to a festival, by all means. But that obviously changes, because I think, I'm not up on all of the festivals, but as soon as a film would enter a streaming service, it's not really liable to be part of a...
It's not had a premiere.
Yeah.
It has had a premiere online, basically.
Right. So I don't know. I don't know. I haven't really gone down the rabbit hole of all like the horror film festivals or all the kind of the genre-oriented film festivals, but that would be a goal for me for sure, and that's what I endeavor to do with any one of these films, is make it something that I would love to submit to a festival. And I think I've done that. I think like with the name, I Know What You Did Last Christmas, I'm very proud of it. Like I'm proud of it as like as a bit of a genre horror shot in 7 days.
Is that your proudest one so far?
We did Dracula in Space, and
I saw.
Dracula in Space, 5 days. So again, that vertical drama pace in an escape room in Leeds, and we get this brilliant SFX woman, Maddie. Shout out to Maddie. She really made this Dracula. Marcus Massey, who I'll have on the podcast tomorrow, which I'm excited about, made him look super scary. This escape room there was a spaceship escape room, so we shot a lot of the scenes in the spaceship, and then it's also because it's Dracula, there's some VR moments, and he's infiltrating the VR kind of like on a Freddy Krueger kind of trip. And then we have they had this gothic kind of church escape room. So we were able to film some stuff there where it's like almost like they kind of flash back to learn more about Dracula, because they're all in the future flying in a spaceship, and
you got to do a screening for one of these films. I would love to.
That's the plan.
I'd love to see it.
And I think that's what I'm trying to do. You're right. You know me. I'm excited about these projects. I want to get my actors excited about these projects, and it is a family-oriented affair. It's not like so. Luis has been absolutely amazing in making the films, but it isn't like this whole plan for premiering. There isn't a whole plan for premiering and stuff like that. So Izzy, one of the supporting actors from Tailor Made, said, "Hey, listen, I'm going to do a screening December 7th. Greg, can you help me out with maybe finding a cinema?" So I think we'll do a screening at a Close Up Cinema in Shoreditch, December 7th. You're invited.
I'll be there. I'm there.
So yeah, again, you know me, like, of course I want to have screenings for these, and Tom's been the same way. Tom's like, I want to be there, man. You let me know. So yeah, you guys will get a sense of things like it's very similar. It's very similar, but it's just that excuse me. It's just that flipping it horizontally and trying to make it happen, man.
Yeah. But I guess, like with a feature film, you...
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
No worries, man. I guess you want to say a bit more, like, than a vertical. You want it to be a bit more, like, of a statement about, like, your filmmaking philosophy and, like, what you want to put on the screen.
I get the scripts. Like, what I love about directing is that it's just your interpretation, right? Right in French, it's the real... I'm going to totally butcher. The
term for a director.
Yeah, in French, real...
I'm not going to butcher it.
No. I'll cut it out. But it's that realizing. It's that realizing of the film, and so you get some writing and you look at it and you go, okay, and you're similar, like you like to get the writing, it sounds like, and do a little rewriting to make it work for depending.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's one of the big things that I'm doing with verticals is every time I get a script, I kind of rewrite the dialogue, because some of it is like you can't get an actor to say some of these lines because it's coming from China, and they've usually translated the script through ChatGPT or it's not being like closely translated to fit like a cultural
for sure
equivalent in the UK. So like that's one of the things, like before I do a vertical, even if it is still going to be the vertical style, I at least want to have some kind of say in like how the people talk or how what they're doing in a small way.
It's great.
So man. I think that's a big part of my job at the moment. I think another thing that's interesting about verticals at the moment is a lot of big Western media companies are starting to pay attention to them. Yeah. Like Disney Plus have just started putting some eyeballs on them. Fox have just signed with this like Ukrainian company to make 200 series. So I think the fact that these Hollywood established studios are starting to kind of invest in them, that's a sign that it's going to rapidly change even more in the next like 2 to 3 years. And I think with that we're going to see bigger budgets. People are going to get paid more, because the budget of a vertical drama is still very low compared to a film or TV show, but you're still having to work just as hard, if not harder. And I think it would be nice to see everyone get paid a little bit more.
For sure.
It would be nice to see us to get more time, like doing one in 2 weeks instead of 8 days. And then I think with that, hopefully just the quality will keep kind of going up and up, and the directors and the actors can kind of experiment a bit more with the style and like what they can be.
For sure.
Because at the moment the style is very like formulaic. It's very much like, as a director, you don't get to experiment with the camera that much. You don't get to experiment with the editing that much, but you sort of come in, you have a scene, and you're doing just kind of wide close-ups, inserts, and that's kind of like the rinse and repeat. And I think the more time we can get to kind of make these shows, the more we can experiment and find some actual kind of more interesting visual shots or sequences. And I think the other thing, which I've not touched on with verticals, is like the post-production process is very much cut off. Yep. I don't really get to be involved with the edit.
Really?
I mean, I get to give notes, but because they send it, most of the time it's done in China, and the editors... they only speak Mandarin, so you can't really have a direct relationship with the editor. You have to go through the client, and sometimes you don't know how much of your notes are actually being relayed to them. And then maybe I'll do one batch of notes on the cut.
Sure.
They don't show me anything, and then it gets released, and then that's it.
It's similar. It's that control is tricky. And like to be able to have potentially like more Western companies looking into this stuff would definitely be helpful for us, right, as English speaking people. Like it would be interesting. I mean, I don't know. It's weird because I hear such an array. I hear Jumbo say the opposite, where it's going to be more, there's going to be less, but who knows?
Well, there's also this other thing going on at the moment where a few companies have sort of expressed a little bit of concern about shooting in the UK,
right?
Because there have been some projects which haven't gone so well, projects where the clients have fallen out with the crew, or violence has occurred on the set, and some bad things have happened. And I think because of those sort of misfortunate events, there's a little bit of hesitancy for some of these companies. But I think all we can do is just keep, improving the standard and improving like the professionalism of the sets. And my brother he's about to direct a really ambitious one next month. It's medieval fantasy. It's like one of the biggest budget verticals I've heard of in the UK. And I think if that goes well, you could see more companies being like willing to come back here and continue shooting. Because I think the way the Chinese companies perceive it is like Americans are the best, and the British are like not as good as the Americans. So now I kind of feel like we need to beat the Americans, essentially. Sorry to say that.
It's okay. That's okay. I mean, I wish Tom the best with it. He's someone I know, and I want him to succeed with the project. It sounds super cool. I have actors hitting me up saying, "Hey, can you get me in touch with Tom? Like, I really want to be a part of this, this and that." So it sounds super cool. I mean, I think, you got to think all the big companies are looking at it at the very least, right? And if
they have to, like the money they're making, and it's the shocking thing for me was when I found out last year in China, vertical dramas outperformed the theatrical box office.
Yeah,
I think they made like $6.9 billion. And the theatrical box office made like 6.4.
I mean, people are on their phone just 24/7. So it's just, not to sound like kind of like that, just stating the obvious, but there's just so much access, and maybe people are getting a little, right? The evolution of the doom scroll, right? Like how much Instagram.
Well, I think these companies they just realize that people are mainly consuming content on their phones now. Like most of the stuff they watch is going to be on a phone, and how do we make stuff that caters to that?
And you know what the thing is that like if I'm on my phone going say from here from Warren Street to West Brompton, am I gonna bust out Zone of Interest and watch like 15 minutes of Zone of Interest like on the commute? No, I want to watch that in a movie theater. I want to watch that at home with a cool sound system, and because it's not meant for my phone.
No.
I mean, these vertical dramas are like
tailor-made.
They're
tailor-made for like fitting
for a 15-minute little commute. And if I can get one that would be like, what would be like, again, I mean, an art film, vertical drama. I don't know, that might be a bit much, but like even like a comedy with like say like Jonah Hill and James Frank. I don't know, like or like Will Ferrell or something like that. And it was funny. Like, I mean, would they consider doing it? I mean, who knows? But it's like, but if they were getting paid, they probably would.
But they're not going to pay because the budgets are like, that's why the economics are so like lucrative, is because they're like $100,000 or $200,000 to make, whereas a movie is going to be like $10 million. For sure. But some of these verticals are making more than a movie.
But I think that's what the big companies would maybe be thinking is like, okay, so how do we so we've seen some success from like these Chinese counterparts, like because they've been, I mean, right? It's the vertical dramas have been very popular in China for quite a while, right? And then there's this crossover.
They're a lot more popular in China than they are in the West, and I think the companies in China are still trying to crack the West in a way to like make them mainstream. Because I genuinely think in China they're like mainstream. They have movie studios just for verticals. I know an actress who she went to China to shoot 3 back to back, and she described this. They had a skyscraper with 140 floors, and on every floor was a different set. And she didn't leave that building for like 3 weeks. Wow. She was sleeping there. They were doing 20-hour days. And it's very hard to compete with a country that is like willing to do that and like put in that amount of like resources and time.
But I think that key for the West then is what I was saying a little bit, is like, obviously maybe they won't go out the gate and do something of that caliber with that kind of level of actor. But at some point they're going to dip their feet in the water and go, okay, let's put in like, these two up and coming stars, someone and see if it's like working. You know?
That's what it'll take to open the floodgates. It'll just be like, as soon as one big actor does one, maybe it could like set off a chain reaction.
It's kind of a matter of time, right? I mean, like what is the opposite? Is that I guess I could see UK being a little hesitant if you're talking about it from like kind of a not a restriction, but like. Because when I was talking with Dan about the guy who he owns this, he runs the studio, manages the studio. Yeah. My thought is is it government restrictions that would then be put on vertical dramas in some way? Again, excuse my kind of ignorance for like.
Why would they restrict them?
Well, again, but like what you were saying with like kind of like violence on set or like kind of these types of.
Oh, I think that's less to do with the industry and more to do with like criminal individuals.
Yeah.
And I think, hopefully that has nothing to do with like the sets going forward. But I feel like, it's only a matter of time before a BBC or a Channel 4 or an ITV does their own like vertical series. Yeah. And then it'll become more institutionalized and we'll see, homegrown stories that are maybe more reflective of like, British culture or like Western culture. And I think, it could be interesting to actually give, up and coming. Because I think one of the great things about verticals is for me, it's a space for like emerging talent to like experiment with like working in a professional context. Because vertical directing is the first time I've been paid to direct and like actually do things for a client and do things on time. Yeah. And like this is the timeline. Pre-production starts now, post-production starts then. It's not like a student film where like post-production could be like a year. It can drag on and on and on. It's like things need to happen. They need to happen fast.
Yeah, go.
So like, I think for people to have the opportunity to kind of practice being a professional, I think that's like one of the huge like pluses of like this going on at the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I know I'm very curious where it all ends up. Like, and I think, it's just time will tell. You know what I mean? That's why these conversations are cool because it's really, we're kind of like being able to speak a little bit more. And I'm sure you've been speaking about with your brother and with others, but like for me, even just to kind of better understand what the trends are and what might happen. And it'll be really cool to see it move in a direction where, again, like I said, like you get that comedy or you get that kind of drama that's like kind of a bit of a different than what we've been working on up until this point. Again, this like Renaissance kind of feeling or this medieval kind of vertical drama, or just even something, like you described with the last one you directed, which is a little bit more story oriented and character oriented.
It's like a family thriller. I was like, I want to do more of those.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
You have very little control over what script gets sent your way. You kind of just like, it's like a mystery box. You open it and you're like, oh, so this is the new one. There's werewolves in it. Okay. There's vampires in it. Okay, cool. Okay, this one's a billionaire mafia hitman. Okay, cool.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, I think that covers things. I mean, we could talk, I think, for like 3 hours on vertical dramas and all the different aspects of it. Let's finish with, like, there's a lot of potential with vertical dramas. It could be a kind of a, what is it? Not a lynch point, but like it could be something that's like part of your career for however long you want it to be, potentially.
Yeah. Well, until I make my first feature, that's kind of like what I'm kind of envisaging is like do this until I, break into features, and that's kind of going to be the stepping stone. And I think a lot of filmmakers will have the same path going forward. I think there'll be, in a similar way to like 70s filmmakers were part of Roger Corman's B movies. Or like, British filmmakers in the 80s were in advertising. People now are going to do verticals before they get into movies. And I think that's going to be kind of just like the sign of our times.
Absolutely. Can you tell me what are you looking for from your first feature? Like what are you seeing? I know again you're writing often. Tell me like what the process has been there, and like what you see, like even if it's just like a theme or an idea that you see as being kind of the key.
Well, I'm very conscious of the fact that whatever my first feature is, I'm probably not going to have a big budget. So I'm very much thinking in terms of what inside the limitations of what I have at the moment. So it's going to be a London movie. Yeah. It's going to be a contained piece with not that many characters. It's not going to have special effects. It's not going to be a period piece. So it's easy to start with just ticking off what it can't be if you're going to be like on a low to micro budget. I'm assuming it could just be something I'm going to fund myself and just do it with like pulling favors, saving up a bit of money. I'm very inspired by Nolan's attempt at that following. Apparently he shot it for £5,000 and like all the kit was in the back of a London cab and he shot it himself and edited it himself. So I'm kind of like half getting myself in a headspace where I'm prepared to do that, like do multiple roles other than directing, which I think is why LFS is great, because I know how cameras work, I know how lighting works, I know how editing works. So if I want to, that's a kind of like a solution. In terms of the script and the story, I'm kind of interested in using a genre as like a part of the story. Maybe it's going to be crime, maybe it's a thriller, maybe it's horror, maybe it's a horror comedy. I saw Weapons this summer and I loved it.
Crazy.
It was such a fun ride, and I thought the way it used horror and comedy was so refreshing, and I just think that would be so cool to do something, my own version of that. Yeah.
I think Weapons was cool because it's kind of like freeing in a way, because it had all these different. Yeah, you're right. It had kind of these genre kind of clashing things just a little bit, but also.
And I love it when a movie can like change tones.
The tone.
It can do these big gear shifts where like 1 minute you're like genuinely like shitting yourself, like this is so scary, and then the next minute you're like laughing. And when a film can do that, I think that's like magic, if you can scare people,
like the unexpected. I think Weapons was kind of good at
and it had some like really good gory moments that didn't feel gratuitous, with the needles in his face. I was like, it's like, it's so visceral and horrible, but it also made me laugh.
And Josh Brolin is fucking fantastic in it,
and Alden Ehrenreich, like it's got a great ensemble, it's got good characters, and like I think it's, whatever I do, it needs to have like really engaging characters. I can't just do something with just a plot.
Cool, man. Cool.
For its own sake.
I get it. No, that's really great. Like, I think that even that alone, this idea of London and kind of thinking a little bit about what's within your means, and the idea that it would be this kind of independent feel, this kind of low budget feel, which I mean, I think is like great, and it's realistic, and it's
I think you have to be.
And then writing, and then I think that helps with the writing, you know what I mean? Because it helps you go, okay, well, I want a couple of characters, and then what's the dilemma? What's the inciting incident? What's happening? I don't know. You're always looking around yourself for ideas. You look at like the heist at the Louvre recently. You know what I mean? That's that's an incredible like.
There's going to be a movie about that.
Oh my god,
or a Netflix documentary or something.
Oh my god, like just I was just looking at some of the videos from people filming on their phone as they're stealing stuff from the. I don't know if that was AI or not, but it looked like people were filming on their phones. Like the different, you can't tell now. You can't tell if
you gotta have your wits about you, otherwise you're gonna be convinced like the Queen is back from the dead or something.
I don't know, whatever it was though. It looked it's just like to think about like that is like a story in and of itself. So it's I guess what I'm saying is we're surrounded by stories, and it's a little bit like the Queen is back from the dead.
But what about you though? Like, obviously the Champ Dog features are like one thing, but like, do you, I presume you still have an ambition to like write and direct.
Of course, man. I have to say, I love kind of taking this writing where I do have access to the writer a lot of the time, and I can speak with him and say, hey, I don't really understand. It's helping me so much with script comprehension. I struggle sometimes when I'm reading a script, and because I think I'm doing like 3 things at once. I'm reading it just to understand the story and the characters and everything, and then I'm visualizing it as well, and again, practicality wise, and like, okay, SFX person there, this and that. Each page, like every sentence, I'm doing that. And then I think the third is kind of like just I don't know, it's just for some reason it's just like it was difficult for me to do all those things at the same time.
But like, for example, like I've not seen your Champ Dog films, but I've seen like ITN Networks. They've uploaded a few of their films on YouTube. And like, I guess what I'm saying is like, those films for me, they don't feel like Greg Randolph films where like Swimming or Different Faces or like The Right Film.
I get it.
Like, I think you have a style and a tone, a bit of like a whimsical drama style.
No, but
I think do you want to evolve that into a feature, or do you feel like the Champ Dog films are like scratching the itch?
I love it. You know what? It's a confidence thing, I think, a lot of the times, because it's like I have a style, right? Like we all have a style, right? We all have films we love, and we have a feeling in our heart of the types of things we want to communicate, right? Now, if I write something, I think that's the best iteration of it, right? So Swimming.
It's going to be the purest essence of your style.
I mean, it's just, that's that makes sense, right? It makes sense that would be the case because you're kind of in the writing, you're visualizing, and then in the directing, you're visualizing, and it's in the editing, you're just more surrounded by the material. When you get someone else's writing, they have a completely different idea of the story. But the director, again, is that realizer of the thing. So I'll take the story with the character, Bill and Tom and Sarah, and it's like, say they're on a boat in the middle of the water and it starts to sink or something like that. It's kind of like a dark, but like I think maybe the writer will have one idea of that story. But then I think for me, it's like kind of, I think it's just like an empowerment thing where I really try and, again, because you know how it is with like these really, really tight schedules where people can get down, people can get a little frustrated a little bit. And I think the director is that creative leader, and we have to hold our head high, even if it's 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. for 5 days straight, some bullshit like that. And then, I was telling the actor yesterday who just did his first vertical drama, who's connected with Dorian for the film he produced. But like, I think one of the really important keys is like, is just like even at that 11th hour on the 4th day, still got a day to do and it's fucking 5 in the morning. Yeah. You say everyone's doing a good job, right? And I think that actually kind of plays into what the film starts to look like because people, it's that, right? That tribal mentality that you feel a little bit when you're on a set. So if I'm a great guy and I can go out there and I can catch 100 fish, right? I can do that. And like everyone else stays home and does, but if I empower everybody in the room to all know how to do that process and feel capable of doing anything, we can catch 1,000 fish as a group. And I just feel like in a film that's so that works for me. If I'm telling everyone that everyone's doing a good job and I mean it, and it's at just the right time, I think you get the most out of it. And I actually think that's part of like creating that confidence. Now, that's particular with like the type of work we're doing now where it's so last minute. Obviously that can change when we have more time, we're more comfortable and no one's at each other's neck or something like that. But I do feel like in these early stages, just that bit of empowerment where maybe not all of us have made it yet or feel like we've made it yet, and there might be a little lack of confidence or this and that. But I've been blessed, and I think because of that mentality and just that energy of just, that excitement for wanting to make, people kind of get excited and they're like, okay, we're going to memorize the line. And, okay, Greg's busy doing his thing, so we're going to be busy in here practicing our lines to make sure we don't forget anything. Where maybe in a different scenario, again, because it's you might get people that are super talented right out the gate or that have gone to film school. I think it's helped me a lot to, you get some people that are maybe hired off of Mandy that haven't had the ability to go to film school and just don't have that level of confidence. And then that kind of can cave in on them. There's so many experiences of bad vibes on set.
Yeah, you got to be able to trust your team. And I think that's when you are in those, especially like the vertical situations where like things need to be done very kind of last minute and like on the fly. If you have good HODs around you and you trust them, like you just feel so much more like taken care of.
A million
but
times
like
better,
if there's a HOD who's like not as prepared or sort of, has been hired as a favor and all of a sudden they've got to do something really complicated and then you're like, it's a panic. But I just did the last one I did, my production designer built a prison in like half a day and I was like,
wait, say that again?
You built a prison.
Like
literal jail cells, like from scratch in like a room like twice this big.
Oh, it's amazing what these people, and far more creative than I am, like Lindy on Dracula in Space, with space guns and making a medical center in a library in this escape room, and like it's fucking cool, man. Yeah. It's great, and it's the AD making sure that Lindy's ready to do that. Five scenes before we're there, and it's just, you said it, the circus meets the discipline,
the
military discipline.
The military meets the circus. It's a beautiful marriage.
Yeah, and so I think that's it. I think it's like early stages. It still feels like early stages with directing, and then maybe when I go back to writing, I do want to do something kind of on my experiences living in New York in my 20s. Like that would be the first thing. It feels right as a feature, and it's just something I think we talk about, right? Making films that are like close to you a little bit, and that is something that like I have a memory of living there, but I think I could potentially apply it to London.
Yeah, well, I think like there's sometimes a misconception of like what is a personal film.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people think a personal film should just be like an autobiographical film, but I think that's not true. I think a personal film is just is like any emotion that you can really relate to
and translate.
And I think that, Interstellar can be the most personal film ever if you have a very deep relationship with your daughter, and you want to get back home to see her. And then that's why a lot of people, I guess, like cry when they watch it, because they have that father-daughter relationship, even though it's packaged up as a space like adventure movie. It's still very personal. You don't have to write this like coming of age story that is like Roma, where it's about your childhood.
For sure.
It can be personal in so many different ways. So
for sure.
you could do your story in London or in New York, but if
I think so.
if it's tapping into that emotion
Exactly.
that you want to explore, then it can still be exactly what you want it to be.
I think again, a little bit of my feeling of like creating things a little conceptually, kind of moving away from just kind of a specific scenario and trying to make it universal without pulling people out of it. And there's something I enjoy in that. I don't know. It's just like, it's just fun to build worlds. That's what we do. That's why we love to do what we do.
We like to play dress up and film it, It's like, what's better than that?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So, Ruari Chambers, I want to thank you so much for being on the United Filmmaker podcast. Hopefully we can do another one soon. Yeah, like I said, maybe a different kind of organization, some type of director's commentary or just a round table with vertical dramas.
Super down.
And just thank you so much. And I'll be seeing you soon.
Thanks so much, Greg. Great to be here.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the United Film Podcast. We are a self-funded organization looking to broaden and diversify the filmmaking culture here in London. Please like, subscribe, and share this podcast. It is through our listeners that we gain recognition and are able to fund new initiatives with this podcast. Thank you.